back to Buses, Bikes, and Beers. Today's going to be a little bit different video. It's not going to be the vlog video style that we normally do. We're still getting ready for our bike ride across the US. Today's a bit of a how-to video, and we're going to be talking about fenders today, because fenders is something we've struggled with on the Apollo bikes.
The fender is rubbing in various places. I do think I had a really hard time when we built these bikes getting the fenders adjusted. But I did get them there. And then when we put the 26 tooth cog on in the back, which is bigger with the same belt, you basically have to move the center line between the crankshaft and the axle closer together, because you're using the same belt. And the result is now the tire is sitting slightly forward from where it was, and all the adjustments are screwed. And so I'm gonna have to go fiddle with that. Really, the only complaint I have about these bikes are the fenders. We bought these fenders. Now, it wasn't really intended to have fenders, and most gravel bikes don't have fenders. We wanted fenders because we are gonna use these to tour. And the front fenders are fine. No, the front fenders went on just fine. The rear fenders are very problematic. There's just not a lot of clearance.
And I'm going to explain why I think we were struggling and why the proposed fender that we're going to build today fixes that problem. We bought fenders with the bikes, and they're very nice fenders. They're high quality. They mount nicely. They have some adjustability. The front fenders have worked great, but we've struggled with the rear fender, and the problem has been they would rub on the edge of the tire. Rub at this radius, not on the flat, but at this radius. And I finally determined that these are 40 millimeter wide tires, and these fenders are, relatively generic fenders. And so they wrap around the tire. And 40 millimeters is about as wide a tire as you're supposed to use with these fenders. So what happens is the tire nests in here, and so if the fender isn't perfectly centered on the tire, then it rubs in the width. And we struggled, and we would adjust, and then it seemed like they were fine, and the next thing you know, they're rubbing again, and it drove me nuts. So I eventually took these fenders off, and I did tons of research, and for months, actually, I've been thinking about it. And so finally, I decided to make my own, and I have made a prototype. Before I took it off the bike, I took some video of how this prototype fits onto the bike, so I'm gonna show you that now. This is the prototype of the fender. And you can see how it attaches to the rack here. And I've got it pop riveted here. I've got these wire clamps that are holding it to the rack. And then here I used this hole in the cross member of the frame to mount this bracket. You can see where we've notched out here to get clearance for this part of the frame. And then down here, we got a zip tie holding it to the down tube. So yeah, that's the prototype. So that's how it worked quite well. I've had this prototype on the bike for weeks. I've been riding it, and I've been very happy with it. It solves the problem because it's flat, and it protects me and the gear from water splashing up as the tire goes around in the rain or mud or whatever, but it doesn't wrap around the tire. And so it's not as sensitive to alignment, and it's worked great. I'm really happy with it. Gonna build a real one today for my bike, and I'm gonna build a second one for Mary Beth's bike. But let's go over everything that we need to build this fender. All right, so I've laid out all the tools and all the supplies that you need to build this. But it starts with the fundamental fender is made from a residential threshold. It turns out to be the perfect length for this fender, so you don't have to cut it down. You'll also need a piece of 1/2-inch angle, aluminum angle. And what that's for is to make this support that goes out to the rack. So this is the little bridge support that we pop rivet onto the fender. You also, I got a piece of 3/4 inch aluminum bar stock at the hardware store because the prototype used just a, commercial, whatever, off the shelf angle thing, but I don't like it. I don't like the way it looks because you only need one hole here. And so I built this that I'm going to pop rivet onto the fender, and then I'll drill a hole in it. We'll do that in a minute, and that will be, this will replace that, and I think it will look nicer, be slightly lighter, but I made that out of this 3/4 inch stock. We'll show you how to do that. I got some black zip ties to zip tie the fender to the frame. I got these at Harbor Freight. What else do you need? You do need these little 3/8 inch cable clamps. This is what clamps it's what clamps these, go around the bars of the rack to make this. So you need those, and then you need an old inner tube, and because you got to cut a little piece of rubber and put it in there so you get a nice tight fit. I cut these little pieces of rubber out of that inner tube so you get a nice tight clamp fit. Then you need some hardware. This is 5mm hardware. This is stainless. I got stainless hardware. I got locking nuts, the nylock nuts so that they won't vibrate loose. We have a Cricut machine, and so I cut out, you won't be able to see it, but I cut out some strips that I plan on wrapping this aluminum so that these fenders are black. Mary Beth wanted sparkly black, so we got sparkly black for her, and I have just regular gloss black. The tools you need, there's really no specialty tools except for maybe this. This is a nibbler. This has a little thing in here, a little nibbler, so that as you squeeze it, it nibbles away at the metal, and that's how I made these. Pop rivet gun, maybe you don't have, I don't know, but you could screw these on, but I like the rivets better. Okay, so that's everything you need to build this fender. I've unwrapped the threshold, so you got to make it bendy. All right, again. Now, one of the things, because this threshold has holes in it, when you bend this, you have to be careful because it creates a weak point, and then it tends to want to bend there more. So when you start to bend it, don't start here. Start in the middle where there isn't a hole. That's one thing I learned. What I started with is I bent this around the bike tire, but it's got what's called spring back. When you bend metal, you bend it to a place and then it springs back. It's got this natural tendency to spring back. So if it would stay bent around the tire, around the bike tire, then it would be perfect. But the reality is you got to bend it around something smaller so when it springs back, it's about the right radius. It also, when you mount it, you can actually bend it a little bit. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you got to get it more bent than straight. I'm going to use the road bike because the tire is clearer. And so what I did last time anyway to make the prototype is I just started bending it around the tire. And this is where patience pays off. You just sort of bend it around. And again, this is where you don't want to basically put this hole where you're going to sort of bend, because it'll almost crease it there. So you want to sort of start your bending in between the holes. So this is a slow, methodical process. You want to try to keep it somewhat centered on the tire so that the bend is along this axis of the fender. See, that's the spring back I'm talking about. So you can sit here and you can get it to the radius of the tire. Then when you let go, it springs back. So you can get started on the tire, but I've pretty much got about as much bend as I'm going to get with the tire. So now you have to find something in your shop that is a smaller diameter. You go to your spare tire in your Vespa. And if you don't have, you probably don't have a Vespa.
I was just looking at the wheels on our dolly, and this might be a good size to bend fenders on. More people may have one of these at home rather than the Vespa.
You find something. that's a little bit smaller diameter. See, I'm not wrapping it around the tire because this is actually too small. I'm just using this smaller radius to help bend it. But if I were to wrap this around the tire, then it would actually bend, and then it would be too tight. It would be too small. So if I actually had something that was bigger than this, I would probably use it. But this is working because I'm being very careful not to completely wrap it around this thing. I mean, in other words, if I were to take these two ends and wrap them down, that would be bad. You know, I can't be in a hurry, otherwise you're gonna make a mistake. That's my theory. It's looking pretty good. Let's go test fit it. See, now I haven't cut the notches for this, so it's not going to sort of sit right. But you can sort of see that this is sticking up. Now, when you hold it in the frame here, when I put this cross member, it's going to hold it to the thing here. You can see, but I would actually like this to be down more. I would like this to be sort of more consistent, sort of flaring out, which I think you do want to a certain extent, but I think this is too much. So I'm going to go bend it just a little bit more. Okay, so I bent it a little more. So I'm not unhappy with that. Although this looks like I bent it. I don't know if you can tell, but where this hole is, it sort of goes, the radius changes of my bend because of that hole, probably because I wasn't careful enough. Maybe this end is better. Yeah, it's about the same.
It's better.
Is it better? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then I will make this the outside end. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's close enough, but I think what we want to do now is we want to cut the notches in this for here so that we can get it where we really want it away from we want this to actually be touching here so we get clearance to the tire. So I'm going to cut the notches now so that we can nest that up there and then really look at the bend. And then I'll have to be careful because if you bend it, after I cut the notches, that area where the notches are will be super weak. And so if I bend it, so I'll have to be really careful after I cut the notches. But that's the next step.
Okay, I got this marked. I got it marked down here. These are the notches for the zip ties. And then these are the notches to clear the frame. And so I've got those marked. And now I'm going to use my nibbler. And you just nibble your way a slot. Okay, I got those little slots nibbled away, but the nibbler leaves little Sharpie things. It's not smooth. So I didn't have this in the list of tools I talked about earlier, but you need some little files, and you just sort of clean up the nasty edges so it's smooth, so it doesn't scratch your bike too much.
Now I'm nibbling the spot for the zip ties. Now these you want to file really good because you don't want something sharp that makes your zip tie break. So let's go test fit it.
You thread it through the bike frame until these notches line up, because those notches are to clear so that you can get the maximum tire clearance. This is the place where you're going to have the minimum tire clearance because of this. So this is the place where you want to maximize your tire clearance, and so you want to get the fender as close to this cross member as you can.
And then you check down here to make sure that the notches for the zip tie are going to be low enough to miss that.
'Cause I wanted about the same this way, but it didn't need to be as tall this way. So this is 1.5 inches, and I came up 1 inch. So this is 1.5 by 1. You measure 2.5 inches. You want to get this in the vise as square as possible. Nice thing about aluminum is it's soft.
Okay, now I'm gonna go mark it at 1.5 inches so we know where to bend it. Put this in the vise so the long part is up, so you have more leverage. And get it right above the line. Don't put it right on the line because you want there's going to be slight bend radius to make sure it's squared up in the vise. You want to have a nice square bend, and then you just bend it. There you go. We're going to mount the bracket. We're going to drill the hole in that little bracket, and we're going to mount the bracket. And then Mary Beth marked the center of the hole on the edge there. So now we have a measurement, how far up we need to go, and then we're going to center the hole on this thing. Okay, let's go try it. Come on, everybody. Looks good. And so I just need to know where the end of the bracket is, so that when we pop rivet the bracket here, these notches will be in the right place relative to the frame. You got two 1/8 inch holes here, the corresponding holes there. So we're gonna pop rivet it together. But before we do that, I wanna go ahead and put on this. I wanna put the 1/2 on, then rivet this so that I don't have to cut around this.
Brentley's taken over the camera work for this job because this is not his favorite thing. So
Stickers.
I cut the one sticker out. We have 2 of these lengths of stickers that need to go along here. It's longer than it needs to be, the 2 of them together, but we're gonna trim them up later. We put the fender in the vise to hold it steady and sturdy. Bentley's gonna draw a line with the marker. That will be my guide.
It's great. I think you're doing a swell job, really.
Okay, I've reached the end of the fender.
Perfect. We got the sticker on. It looks pretty good. Yay. Okay, let's switch.
Gotta do this part.
Yeah, no. We can't, because what we're gonna do now,
Oh,
we're gonna mount this bracket. Then we're gonna mount this thing in the bike, screw everything down from here out. Then we gotta do some measurements for this bracket. Then we gotta drill the holes for this bracket and do all, just like we did on this half. And then we put the sticker on before we, I'm pop riveting it from the bottom up so that it's flush on the inside so it doesn't get into tire clearance. And so I've just taken this pop rivet and I've pushed it through the hole. Okay, now the trick to pop riveting is to get the 2 pieces clamped together really good. So I got this small vice grip clamp. I'm gonna clamp these really good. Then you just squeeze that. There's one. See, it flared that out. And the little tip of the anvil mushrooms out and makes a little head. Now it's rock solid. Okay, now I'm going to put the fender on the bike. Mount it up. Oh, the black looks nice. So much better than the shiny aluminum. This time I'm actually going to tighten this up, even though it's a pain in the ass, because I want this to be in exactly the right place. And I'm probably even going to put a cheap
zip tie.
Yeah.
That's just a temporary zip tie.
It is.
The real one's gonna be black.
Okay, so now what we need to do is make a bracket like this to go between the struts of the rack. And so that's what I'm gonna do. And I know this one works perfectly because it was already mounted, so I'm just gonna measure it, and it is 3 1/8. Got the fender all centered where we liked it, and I made this mark. We got everything where we wanted it, so now I know this needs to go there. center so I can drill 2 holes here and put 2 rivet. I'll drill the holes for the rivets, make sure everything's good. Then we got to put the other sticker on. Oh. Okay. Well, we got the sticker on, and I pop riveted this on after we got the second sticker on. So this is a finished fender, so I am gonna now install it. The first thing I'm gonna do is put this bolt back in.
Looks so nice black.
Looks so nice black. The prototype was nice. I mean, it was nice to prove it out, but every time I looked back there, I could see the shiny aluminum, and I'm like, I wish that was black. So I'm gonna snug this up. I'm not gonna totally tighten it because I want the ability to sort of wiggle stuff around to make sure everything's centered. So I will not snug this. I will not tighten this too tight, but tight enough so it's not loose.
But
This is a pretty thick.
I'd make sure that that other screw's gonna go in that hole before you get it too tight.
It's a good idea. That's why you want to marry a smart woman, so she can save you hassle.
There it is.
All done.
We have a fender. Now we just have to do it one more time for my bike.
No, it looks really good, actually.
Yeah.
Pretty pleased with it. Centered nicely on the tire.
It's not gonna rub.
It is not going to rub. That fender will not rub.
Ever.
See?
There it is, all done. Nice black fender. We'll probably paint these black when we do Mary Beth's. But it really looks good. Quite pleased with the fender. It's centered in the tire. It's, yeah. That's the fender. Woohoo!